Now, let's talk to Laura Blumenfeld, who's a former senior policy advisor in the State Department's Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team. And in a moment, we'll hear from Anshel Pfeffer, who's a senior correspondent and columnist for the Israeli daily Haaretz. Good evening to both of you. First of all, Laura, does the US have the power to stop this? And if they do, why haven't they?
The magic word is security. Look, in 2021, Israel's existential security was not at risk. October 7th changed everything. I think that today Israelis feel and Americans feel like Israel has the right and the duty to defend itself. The question is, and Secretary of State Blinken put this at the very beginning of the conflict, he said, how you do this matters. And the United States has been pushing all along for Israel, yes, to prosecute the war, but to do it in a way that's morally defensible. Okay,
so is part of it because it's election year as well, or not?
Well, it's election year everywhere. It's election year in the United States, and absolutely, Biden is getting nipped at his heels. March is Super Tuesday, so yes, there's a certain March madness to it. But I don't think that's all. I think that Biden has a real commitment to Israel's security, and they feel like, the safe haven for Jews has turned into a slaughterhouse. And that real peace will come when Israel reachieves deterrence, right? Everything that Israel has accomplished over the years has been this kind of sheen of power. If they lose that, then remember, before October 7th, the United States was shooting for a regional alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia isn't going to want to have any kind of security pact with Israel if they prove themselves to be weak. So in the long run, I think they see this as an opportunity to create greater peace and greater regional integration.
Mr. Pfeffer, if Joe Biden said stop and meant it, would Israel have to stop?
I'm not automatically. I don't think that it would necessarily happen immediately. And we saw just a couple of months ago, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was here in Israel and he was saying in closed rooms to Israeli leaders that the administration expects there to be a ceasefire by the new year. We're now, I think, already in late February, so 2 months later, and that hasn't happened. And yes, there is obviously a huge amount of influence to the American president has a huge influence here, unlike the House of Commons, when, believe me, nobody in Jerusalem or in Gaza is waiting to hear whether the speaker is going to resign or not. The idea that anything that's going to be said in London is going to have any influence here is just ridiculous. I mean, I've been watching what people have been saying now on your program, and it's just, I really don't understand how they think they can have any influence here. Britain has really no influence here. The Americans certainly do.
But remember, it's election year here as well. Why do you think Mr. Netanyahu and his cabinet can disregard Joe Biden when he says things like, they've gone over the top, or too many innocent civilians are being killed?
Well, as the other interviewee said, right now the Americans aren't pushing with full force on Israel to. They would like a ceasefire. They've got various things that they would like Israel to do differently. But they also, I think, understand that this war is not going to end immediately. Israel has to continue its war against Hamas, and there's obviously the issue of the hostages. And I think what the Americans are doing now, and not just the Americans, is to choose a sort of middle course to try and reach a hostage agreement whereby some of the Israeli hostages can go free after being at 4.5 months in captivity in Gaza, and a temporary ceasefire for a start will be agreed upon for a month or so over Ramadan. And then after that month, they'll see if they can reach another agreement.
And finally, Laura Blumenfeld, this US temporary ceasefire resolution, I mean, is that serious, or is that some kind of diplomatic fudge?
It's Biden on a tightrope. He's all about balance, as your other speaker said. He's using a lot of double-barreled language to target two audiences. It's temporary ceasefire, temporary for the Israelis, ceasefire for the rest of the world. Secretary Blinken is talking about a pathway to two states. Again, pathway, because for the Israelis right now, they're deeply traumatized. They're not ready to accept two states. And for the rest of the world, including Saudi Arabia, we need to look toward that horizon. There's a lot of leverage that the United States could exercise militarily. They can slow down weapons transfers. The IDF is heavily dependent on the United States. Economically, there's a $50 billion bill to rebuild Gaza. Are they going to leave, the Israelis with the bill? Well, the Saudis will come on board. The Americans can use that leverage and say, but you have to acknowledge two states, and so forth. So it's just a matter of timing. I think we need some emotional intelligence in addition to diplomatic finesse to get to the right place today.
Thank you both very much for your contributions this evening.